Chapter 10. Aaron's grandfather smiled as they approached, the crow's feet around his eyes deepening.
It's so good to see you, Bug.
He gathered Aaron into a hug. A hollow ache opened in Mathias's chest. A century ago, he'd had a family who loved him like that. The two shared a clear resemblance: short stature, chiseled noses, glasses surrounding blue eyes. The man was stockier than his petite granddaughter. His once heavy muscles dissolved into a paunch. Aaron stepped aside, one arm wrapped around her grandfather's waist, and gestured at Mathias.
"Pops, this is Matt, the coworker I mentioned. Matt, this is my grandpa, Travis."
Travis looked Mathias up and down, then stuck out his hand. Mathias, lost in thought, flinched at the sudden movement, swallowing a hiss. The short man chuckled.
Easy, I don't bite.
Mathias couldn't say the same about himself. Curse this crowd and the pressure beating against his temples. He took a firm hold on the demon and accepted the handshake. "Nice to meet you, sir." Travis nudged his granddaughter.
I like this one, he's respectful.
"Pops."
Aaron's cheeks reddened.
"Sorry, Matt, he loves to tease me."
A smile touched Mathias's mouth. "Your granddaughter is one of the best lab techs I've ever worked with. Our current case is the reason I wanted to meet with you." Travis's expression flattened.
I'm a retired police officer, son. I know the rules. Should you be talking to me?
"It's important, Pops, off the record."
Aaron pointed to an empty bench beneath a large shade tree across the street, away from the press of bodies around the taco truck.
"Let's go over there, and we'll fill you in."
After a moment's pause, Travis nodded. He led her across the street, and Mathias trailed after them. It was clear the two of them were close, closer than he'd been with his grandfather. The elder Mr. Hawthorne had been a strict man. He never would have tolerated the monster Mathias had become. Aaron and her grandfather sat on the bench, and she motioned for Mathias to join them. He shook his head. Sitting beside two innocents was a bad idea in his current mental state. Standing at least gave him the illusion of control. Aaron shrugged and turned to Travis.
"Pops, we need to ask you about Mark. You know he's a person of interest in the Waterman kidnapping, right?"
Travis's mouth tightened.
I don't live under a rock, Bug. It's all over the news. Why am I talking to the two of you instead of a detective down at the station?
"Because I think he's innocent."
Aaron grasped her grandfather's hand.
"We know Mark. He couldn't do this."
You're right. If Mark wanted to make a statement, he wouldn't break the law or endanger a child to do it. Then again, I suppose we never know what someone might be capable of.
Travis rubbed his jaw. He looked at Mathias. A chill ran down Mathias's spine. He shifted his gaze to the people walking along the street. "Stop it." Travis was talking about Jerome. Mathias forced himself to meet the old man's eyes. "The evidence against Jerome is incriminating, and a bit too convenient. Aaron said he isn't capable of this crime, and I want to believe her. The police haven't located him yet. Do you know where we could start looking?" He slowly shook his head.
Mark has a lot of friends in the area. I recall him mentioning some property investments, too. It'll take time to run them all down.
"We don't have time."
Aaron closed her mouth. Then she released a frustrated sigh.
"I can't give you details. If the detectives decide to question you, I don't want you knowing too much. But we have to find him before tomorrow afternoon."
Mathias nodded. "If you could give us a lead, even a small one, it would help a lot, sir." Travis stayed silent for several seconds.
There's one place you might look. It's run down, might not even be there anymore, but it's worth a shot.
Mathias and Aaron leaned forward. The old man's features pinched together in a frown.
Mark is my friend, and I don't believe he's capable of this. Telling you feels like a betrayal, especially with that Waterman woman involved.
He folded his arms, eyes downcast.
But if the evidence points to him, listen to his side of the story if you find him. That's all I ask.
Mathias nodded. This isn't a witch hunt. Even though that witch Waterman was behind it, he kept the thought to himself. If Jerome's innocent, he has nothing to worry about. And if he wasn't, if he was holding the girl, he would no longer be the police's problem. The demon rumbled its agreement.
Fair enough.
Travis gave him a curt nod.
His half-brother, William Silman, is a mechanic. Mark shared ownership of a garage with him, Best Auto Care, over on Wilson and 5th, a couple miles from Mark's house. The business failed a few years back, and Bill moved out of state to find work. The property stayed in Bill's name. It wouldn't show up in Mark's real estate records.
Mathias's mouth went dry. Erin met his eyes and her lips formed the words motor oil. That had to be it. Thank you. Mathias held out his hand to Travis. I'll make sure this information gets to the right people.
I hope I haven't made a mistake.
Travis cleared his throat.
Hey, Bug, I have a tickle in my throat. Do you have a lozenge?
Sure, just a sec.
Erin dug into her purse. Grasping Mathias's outstretched hand in a strong grip, Travis pulled him closer and spoke in a low voice.
Work relationship or not, you're involved with my granddaughter. Let me assure you, if you ever hurt her, no one will ever find you.
Erin's grandfather leaned back and flashed a smile, but his eyes stayed cold. Mathias had no doubt he meant every word.
It was nice to meet you, young man.
Travis turned to Erin, who handed him a wrapped lozenge.
We need to do this more often. I don't get to see you nearly enough. You're always working.
Erin kissed his cheek.
I love what I do, but I'll always make time for you. Now let's get some tacos.
I'm afraid I've lost my appetite, sweetheart. This whole thing with Mark...
Erin's face fell.
I'm sorry, Pops. I didn't mean to ruin lunch.
Don't fret, Bug. At my age, I shouldn't eat as much as I do.
He patted his rotund belly.
I won't starve from a missed meal, but you look exhausted.
He pointed a finger at Mathias.
Make sure she eats, son. I'm holding you responsible.
Pops.
She shot Mathias an apologetic look. Travis took the library book from Erin, waved, and headed down the street. Erin watched him until he disappeared, a line between her brows. Mathias glanced at his wristwatch. 11:30. If he left now, he would reach the garage around the time Gomez was distracting the entire force with his meeting. Perfect.
Are you going to tell Detective Gomez?
Mathias jerked his head up. Erin watched him with a serious expression. Of course.
Matt.
What?
You're thinking of following this lead on your own, aren't you?
She was quick. He widened his eyes. Erin, why would you think that? We came to see if your grandfather had any useful information. He did. I'll pass it along.
Right. And I suppose you never forget to log bits of evidence either.
Mathias started. When had she caught on? How much did she know? Either he hadn't been careful enough or she was even sharper than he'd realized. He shrugged. I don't know what you're talking about. She shook her head.
Playing dumb won't work, Matt Hawthorne. Mark is my grandpa's friend. I have as much right to talk to him as you do. More, actually. If you're going over there, you're taking me. Or next time the logs don't match the crime scene photos, I won't chalk it up to an accident. I'll report it.
Mathias's chest tightened, and the demon snarled. He was certain he'd deleted photos like that over the years, but he must have missed. How many? 1? 5? He fought to keep his face unmoved. She had no idea how dangerous this game could get. The demon urged Mathias to silence her, but he cringed from the thought. He had to get her to back off, even if it meant losing his chance at Jerome. He assumed a hurt expression. If you see something I miss, next time tell me instead of assuming I did it on purpose. I thought you knew me better than that. We all make mistakes, but I never expected you to use them against me. Erin flinched.
I'm not trying to,
Going after Jerome is crazy, Erin. Mathias ran a hand through his hair. Your grandfather is upset, and that upsets you, I get it. But you don't need a black mark on your record. I'll tell Gomez at the meeting, okay? Let him handle it.
But you...
Erin's shoulders drooped. Her voice came out as a resigned whisper.
I'm sorry, Matt. I don't really think those things I said. I'm not myself right now.
She blew a strand of hair out of her face.
I don't like seeing my grandpa so worried.
She lowered her head and her ears reddened.
Just forget I said anything.
His stomach churned. He'd taken her honest suspicions and twisted them. The demon chortled and he closed his eyes. He'd done it to protect her. He'd do it again if he had to. Hey, don't worry about it. He nudged her shoe with his toe. Let's get you some lunch. Travis is counting on me, you know. She offered a half smile.
I could eat a taco.
Come on, then. He walked her across the street to join the throng. The blood smell pressed in on him. He breathed through his mouth, running multiplication tables in his head to distract himself. After an eternity, his watch said 10 minutes, they reached the front of the line. Erin stood on her toes to peer through the truck's window.
I'll have 2 of your chicken tacos.
She glanced over her shoulder at Mathias.
What do you want? I'm buying.
He shook his head. I'm good. I had a big breakfast. His demon snarled. The vial of blood he'd knocked back that morning seemed farther away than ever.
Come on, please. Call it a peace offering.
She turned back to the window.
And 2 beef tacos.
He slid a 20 to the vendor and waved off the change.
Hey.
Erin glared over her shoulder at him. Mathias shrugged. Call me old-fashioned. Erin rolled her eyes as she collected the food. She led the way to the edge of the crowd and pressed a paper tray into Mathias's hand. 2 yellow shells balanced inside, cradling toppings of green, red, and orange. He wrinkled his nose. He hadn't eaten human food since the morning he'd awoken with Victoria in his arms, drained of blood. The thought of eating these tacos made his stomach roil.
Oh my goodness, these are amazing.
Erin spoke through a mouthful, closing her eyes and letting her head fall back. When Mathias didn't move, she laughed.
Go on, try them. I know the truck looks questionable, but I promise you'll be addicted.
He sniffed, his demon growled, and he pulled back. Erin sat her taco back in its tray.
You can't tell me you've never had a taco.
Mathias made a face. I have different tastes, I guess. The green bits turned out to be lettuce butchered into curling worms. He brushed them aside with a finger. The cold, wet pile of red cubes mixed with shredded orange bits stymied him. Nothing he could recall from his human lifetime resembled this mess. He scraped it off to reveal the beef at the bottom. A rancid odor drifted from it, but it was better than the stuff he dumped from the top. Using his thumb and forefinger, he picked up a piece and put it in his mouth. Erin watched him, a wide grin on her face. The meat had a rubbery texture. He forced himself to chew and swallow. Bile rose in his throat, but he forced that down as well. She burst out laughing. Mathias scowled. I'm glad you're entertained. I can't understand why you people torture yourself like this.
You people?
She giggled.
I don't know what you mean by that, but I'll let it slide.
She held out her hand to take his tray, and he almost shoved it at her.
I guess even Antonio's tacos can't please everyone. What do you like? I don't think I've seen you eat a thing in the whole time you've worked for the department.
Erin took another bite of her taco. Yet another reason getting to know people was a bad idea. Shifting, he folded his arms. The usual stuff, just not anything from dilapidated trucks on the side of the street. Erin laughed again.
Where's your sense of adventure?
I'm adventurous, but not with what goes into my mouth. That wasn't true. Hunting his prey and ridding the world of evil was both adventurous and a meal.
You're different, Matt. You know that. But I'll figure you out.
He stiffened. What do you mean? She wiped her mouth with a napkin.
It's what I do. People fascinate me.
Her gaze dropped to her food.
Maybe that's why I don't have many friends. People think I'm different, too.
A pang shot through his chest. The last thing he needed was her digging into his life, but her quiet confession triggered an ache in the depths of his soul. All she wanted was to belong. In that way, they were the same. He lowered his voice. They don't know what they're missing. Her cheeks flushed, and a shy smile flitted across her face.
We need to get back for Gomez's meeting.
Yeah, the meeting. His heart sank. The ideal opportunity to catch Jerome, and he had to hand it over to the detective. Jerome had better deserve the loyalty Erin and her grandfather gave him. He fell into step next to Erin and trudged back to the precinct.